it's Enigma, and today I want to talk to you about two of the latest additions that I ended up, well, picking up for my gaming arsenal. A while back, I ended up making a video in which I talked about... Actually, I think it might be better if I show you. In the video titled, The Best Purchase I Made for Myself, I ended up talking about this little guy. It's the coolest thing I've ever owned. I'm literally just repeating myself, but I'll stand by this. The console itself, it was ahead of its time, and honestly, it is... Actually, I'm gonna have to take that back. When it comes to consoles that are way ahead of their time, there is no better example than the first pickup that I ended up getting, which, again, added to my arsenal. This is awesome! The PlayStation Portable by Sony is still the king in handheld consoles. This guy holds way too many good memories for me, and as soon as I saw this, I immediately had to pick this up. There's a lot of memories that have been made with this console as well, along with the Nintendo DSi. This is another console that holds a lot of nostalgic memories, and it is super cool to own one of these again. Now, when it comes to childhood memories, you obviously want to own, or at least try to receive, the exact models that you grew up with, except in my case, it's a little different. Just like the Game Boy Advance, even though it's a really cool Game Boy, it's not the Game Boy that I owned. The Game Boy that I owned was a cobalt blue Game Boy Advance SP, which had the folding screen. It's the same thing with the Nintendo DSi. This, even though is a console that I owned, and oh my god, my hands are sweating. Even though the DSi is one of the consoles that I owned, it's actually not the console that I grew up on. The Nintendo DSi model that I grew up with is this one right over here. This is the Nintendo DSi XL in the midnight blue color scheme. I had a lot of really good memories with that console, and to this day, it is still one of my favorite consoles. I've had a lot of fun playing so many different titles. I even remember having to go over when I was a kid to some of my relatives and asking them if I could borrow some copies of games that they owned that I didn't. You had to be very social when it came to using a Nintendo DSi, well, at least when I was growing up. The PSP, on the other hand, was a different story. This is a console that I was able to pretty much recover exactly how I had it. This is the PSP 1000 model, which is the exact same model that I grew up with. I'm not gonna open this up because I literally just repaired it, but behind the battery pack, it says 1000. Now, why did I decide to pick them up besides the obvious fact that they have a very special place in my heart? It's primarily because when it comes to classic games that were released for said consoles, one of the things that we need to do is start preserving them. I'm gonna be completely honest, the state of gaming has gotten so stale that people are seriously considering going back to older consoles and titles. And I myself am no exception. Thankfully, when it comes to the modding community, especially when it comes to housing step-by-step guides on how to do certain things, you can easily take any, and I mean any, of these consoles and modify them to preserve your games. And this is great because let's say something happens to one of your cartridges or your UMD discs, UMD drives is what I meant to say. It's starting to get pretty difficult to get your hands on replacements, especially since, well, with the certain rise when it comes to the popularity of older titles, prices are starting to go up. That's why if you own specific titles for your consoles, I recommend you take the time to learn how to back them up. That way, if anything happens to your games, you always have a backup to fall on. I'm not going to be posting any tutorials on how to modify your consoles because there are so many other content creators that have done a much better job at that than I can. And there's also so many great resources out there when it comes to modifying consoles. If anything, you should also consider upgrading the consoles that you already have. Take the Game Boy Advance, for example. This is a console that had a pretty big flaw when it comes to not having a backlit screen, but now it does. Opening up a console and modifying it so that it can work a little bit better is honestly one of the most fun things I've ever done. It also helps that I have a lot of experience doing certain stuff like this because, well, when you grow up in the environment that I grew up in, repairs were not cheap, so you had to do everything yourself. There is one thing that I'm gonna have to mention before you decide to either modify any of your handheld consoles or at the very least get your hands on a handheld console. If you are going to be preserving your games, my advice is to do your homework on how much storage each console can, well, it can properly handle. I'm just going to tell you right now, the max storage capacity for the Nintendo DSi is 32 gigabytes, and the max storage capacity for a PSP is 128 gigabytes. If you try to go past set storage capacity, you're gonna run into some issues. This is something that I found out the hard way. Thankfully, I was able to fix it, but do keep that in mind. That way you don't make the same mistake. Other than that, 2025 is turning out to be a great year when it comes to finding pickups for older consoles. So if you've been considering getting your hands on an older console, I suggest you go for it. Especially since at this time of year, there are some pretty good deals that are starting to pop up. So take a chance and go for it. Anyways, that's the end of this video. I really hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like and also subscribe to my channel and turn on post notifications so that you never miss out on a video or a live stream. And if you would like to help support the channel, check out buymeacoffee.com/enigma. Links for everything will be down in the description box below. And as always, this is San Diego Shooting Star, signing out.